guys, it's Sarah and today's BookList Thursday. This is a video series I do with Lindsay over at Lindsay's Little Library. And every Thursday we bring you some sort of list or a book topic that we feel like talking about for the week. And this week we are coming at you with our 5-star prediction follow-up. This round we partnered up with Vicky from Vicky's Book Nook, and we picked a theme of books that would fit challenges for some of the yearly reading challenges that are out there. So that was a really fun one. I picked all books for the Buzzword Reading Challenge, which is the only yearly one that I'm doing this year that I'm really concentrating on. And so I thought it'd be fun to pick a couple of those prompts and pick books that would fit them. And then Lindsay and Vicky did their own. And so it was just a lot of fun to see what challenges they were going to be trying to concentrate on and what books they were picking for them as well. So in January, we picked our books and we picked 3 of them. And now we are following up on what our actual thoughts on them are. So make sure you go check out Lindsay and Vicky today. I will have both their channels linked down below and see what they thought of the books that they picked. For me, I picked these 3 and we will just start at the top. Okay, so the first one is The Life We Bury by Alan Eskens. I read this one earlier this month. This was a book that was actually sent to me by Lindsay. She sent it to me for our Christmas book exchange a couple years ago. So I've had it for a long time and I finally read it. And this one is a contemporary / kind of mystery thriller book, if you will. And this follows a young man named Joe. He's in college. And he is in an English class which requires him to complete an assignment where he has to write a biography on somebody. So he has to write somebody else's true story about their life. He does not have anyone in his life that he can just go to and ask to help him with this. So he finds himself at a nursing home asking the front desk if there's anybody that they can recommend who he could talk to and maybe help him out with this assignment. And he ends up getting paired with this man named Carl, who was just recently medically paroled from prison. He's been medically paroled because he has cancer and doesn't have very long to live. So they sent him to this nursing home basically to finish out his life there. And so that sounds interesting, right? Carl was sentenced for murder. So yeah, there's a story there, right? So Joe meets Carl. And they start talking, and Joe starts getting his story little by little. Carl has a very colorful life. He was also a Vietnam War vet and has lots of stories surrounding that. And then they eventually end up getting to the murder and what happened there. Now, Joe is very inquisitive and wants to know these things. He's starting to build a little bit of a relationship with Carl. And so you really see the story coming out, what happened, why, it starts to become apparent to Joe that maybe Carl didn't do this. And Carl maintained his innocence. He never admitted to doing anything. And you see Joe kind of starting to piece things together. And then Joe becomes someone who goes on a mission to try to prove Carl's innocence, basically. Okay, so Joe also has a really, really rough home life with his mom. She is pretty awful. He also has a younger brother who is autistic. And his mother is awful. So I'm just going to say that. Those parts were really hard to read, definitely. But they were also very important and said a lot about Joe's character as well. So those things I liked the addition of that. And okay, so that's all I'm going to say because there's so much more that goes into this, but I don't want to give too much away, obviously. So I gave this book 5 stars. I absolutely loved it. I thought it was fantastic. It kept me guessing. I was on the edge of my seat at points. I loved Joe's brother. I loved him. He was such a great character. And I think the way that he was written as an autistic character was fantastic. He reminded me a lot of an autistic person that I know that's in my life. And I was just like, yeah, yep, that's pretty accurate. And so I loved that edition of it, and I thought that was done really well. And it really surprised me, the things that ended up happening in this book. I wasn't prepared for all that. So like, it was really, really good. And I just really enjoyed my time reading it. So this is actually the first book in a series, which is really cool. So I think the rest of the books just follow some other characters that are featured in here. So it's not like, I don't think Joe continues on in here. Like, I think he shows up every so often or whatever, but it's going to focus on other characters. So I'm definitely interested in reading the other books in this series for sure. Alan Eskin's writing was fantastic. I really, really liked the way he wrote this. And there are content warnings, though, a lot of them. So there is PTSD in here. Carl is a Vietnam War vet. He has PTSD. He does suffer with that. There are war scenes in here that are hard to read. There is rape in here that is hard to read. There is also some sexual molestation happening in here, manipulation. There's child abuse. There's alcoholism and addiction. There's a lot in here that's covered, so be wary of that kind of stuff coming in here. But I loved it. It was 5 stars, hands down. And for the buzzword for this one, I used the one for pronouns. So the word we is in the title, so I used that one for the pronoun. Okay, the next one is The Plot, and this is by Jean Hanff Korelitz. This one is a book that was sent to me as an ARC last year, and I finally got around to reading it. But this one is following an author who is teaching a writing seminar or working at a writing seminar type place. So he has students that he's like mentoring almost and working with. And he meets this student who has a really, really great idea for the plot of a book, a really great idea. And so it's one of those things where, like, as soon as he heard the plot of this book, he knew that this was going to be a bestseller. It was going to be everywhere. It was going to be the new thing, right? And so he was like, oh, well, all right, good for you. Good luck writing that. And he is also in a place in his own writing career where he had a really good bestseller book, but he hasn't had anything since. And he struggles with that kind of feeling a little bit like a failure as a writer. So he kind of sits back and waits for this book to be published, and it never is. It's never published. And he finds himself curious about the student one day, and he tries to look him up and Google him and see if this book has been written. And then he finds out that student died and the book was never written at all. So he decides to take it upon himself to tell this story. So he writes it, it gets published, it's all over the place. Oprah picks it for her book club. Like, it's a huge, huge, huge success. Steven Spielberg is going to adapt it to a film. Like, it's a whole thing, right? So he is very successful after that. Everybody knows who he is. Everyone's heard about this book. Like, everyone's reading it. It's that type of thing. However, it wasn't his idea. So somebody knows that and starts contacting him anonymously saying, I know that this was not your idea. I'm going to expose you, blah, 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 all those things. So he's starting to get scared that his secret's going to come out, that this wasn't his idea, and that he didn't necessarily plagiarize. And that's where I kind of like, it was a little interesting because it wasn't plagiarism. He didn't take word for word what this student had written that he was able to even read when he met that student and he read a sample of his work. He didn't like verbatim copy what he wrote. He didn't even keep the characters' names. He made the setting different, like, but the overall plot was the same. So I think part of me really like struggled with, okay, but it wasn't plagiarism. Like, there's books that have the same type of plot. There's plot devices, there's tropes, you know, there's all those things for a reason. So it wasn't plagiarism in that sense, but I guess like the overall, I guess because it was such a unique thing, and I'm kind of comparing it to like maybe Gone Girl, where you have an unreliable narrator and there's like this huge twist, and you know, what you think you're reading isn't what you're reading and all that stuff. Like, that's been done so much now. But are we saying that they were plagiarizing Gone Girl? No, they drew inspiration from it, definitely. So I struggled a little bit with that in this book, and I'm like, but it's not really plagiarism. Like, but whatever, it's fine. So I guess if it wasn't really plagiarism, then we wouldn't have this book in our hands, right? So he starts freaking out because he's afraid, of all that stuff. And then you see him trying to figure out who this person is and how they know that this was not his original idea. So you see him start to figure that out and research and try to basically find this person. Okay. And then along the way, you find out all the things. I really did enjoy this book. It was definitely slow starting out with. It took me a little bit to really get into it and for some action to start picking up. So there is that, but you also get some of the book in here. So like book within a book type thing, you start to read some scenes from the book, which are important, which I did. At first I was like, why do we need to read this? But it did kind of slowly reveal what the plot of the book was, because you weren't really told right from the get-go. So that was kind of cool. But yeah, so I enjoyed it, definitely. There were some scenes in here that were set in Athens, Georgia, which is really nice, at the University of Georgia. So I was like, oh, I know about that. So that was cool. I did like that. And I kind of was reading this book thinking maybe it was going to be like a 3-star, because I was just kind of like, all right, blah, blah, blah. And I was just kind of waiting to see how the ending was going to go. And the ending was solid. I really, really liked the ending of this book. So I ended up giving it a 4-star. It didn't blow me away. It wasn't like the best thing I've ever read. I thought it was unique and I did like it. And the ending, seriously, was like, yes. Like the last 50 pages, yes. Loved them. So it did shoot the rating up for me at the end there. But yeah, so definitely recommend it. But it was a 4-star read. And the buzzword for this one was bookish related words in the title. So plot is definitely a bookish related word. Last one that I had is The Four Winds by Kristen Hanna. This is a book of the month book. And okay, so Kristen Hanna. This woman. All right. So this book is a historical fiction. It is set in the Dust Bowl era and the Great Depression in America. It is set in Texas and California. So we start in Texas and we are following Elsa, who is a young girl living with her family. And they are definitely falling on hard times because of the agriculture in the area, and they live on a farm. And so, they need food and they grow it and they need milk from the cows that they have and all this stuff. However, the environmental situation that they were in with like the dust and all that stuff is really affecting their livelihood and making it hard for them to live physically and economically. And Elsa has grown up her entire life being told that she is ugly and that she's not worthy of male affection. And back then, that was kind of seen as a woman's worth. If you're not good enough to get married, then what are you good for, basically? So she believes this about herself, and she decides to rebel and ends up getting pregnant. So that's a problem. And so you see Elsa and her family deal with that situation. You see what happens because of that situation. And then you see Elsa make the really, really tough decision that she needs to get out of Texas because the dust is literally slowly starting to kill them. It's getting into their hair and their eyes and their ears and their stomachs, They're swallowing dust because there's so much of it and you can't escape it. One of the most powerful things that was described in here was with the cows. They were trying to milk their cows and all that was coming out was mud because the cows were ingesting so much dust. Like they couldn't even drink the milk. It made me physically thirsty and it made me feel like I needed water. I felt parched while I was listening to this, and just the way that she described it was fantastic. So Elsa makes the really hard decision that she needs to up her family and move because they can't live there anymore. And so they go to California. They had heard that there's a lot of opportunity out there and just better living situations and things like that. So they go and they are met with a whole lot of prejudice, which was really interesting. The people and the government in California did not want them there. They felt that they were just there stealing their resources, living off their land, basically like, trying to take over, and we don't want you here. We barely have enough for ourselves. You're not welcome, basically, is what it was. And that was really surprising to me. I was really surprised that that was in here. I didn't realize that that would be a thing, but I mean, it makes sense. They're using government subsidies to help them, and that was not thought of very kindly by other citizens who needed that as well. So I thought that was a very interesting aspect of it. And this one was very sad, but very good. Very, very good. I kind of didn't love Elsa's daughter, to be honest. I felt she was like such a pain in the butt. But yeah, other than that. And the audiobook for this is fantastic. It's narrated by Julia Whalen, who was one of my favorites. I will listen to anything she narrates. I think she's fantastic. So definitely a high recommend, not only on this book, because I did give it 5 stars, but also on the audiobook if you choose to use audiobooks as a medium. This one is fantastic. So I gave it 5 stars, and the buzzword for this one was number in the title. So 4 is a number. So that worked out really nicely. Okay, guys, those are my results. 2 5 stars and a 4 star. I think that was really good. That was really good for this round. So please make sure you go check out Lindsey and Vicky today and see what their results were from their 5-star predictions. I'm really excited to see what they thought of their books. And we will see you guys again soon. Hope you have a great day. Bye.